You want me to wait another minute? You want me to go ahead? Because there are people still coming in.
Maybe give it just one more minute here, 2:04, and we can get going because yeah, there's a lot of people still popping on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe one more minute, you think?
Yeah, we can probably get ready to get go. So I put the link for the pretest for this webinar in the chat. And also there's obviously the QR code on the screen if you want to use your phone. So if everybody could just take a quick moment and do the pretest, that would be extremely helpful. So we'd appreciate it.
And if anybody doesn't have their ability to see the screen, just for any law enforcement partners that we have that would like post credit, please include your post number either in the comments for me, or you can email me directly at mquinn@stlouiscountymod.gov so that I can make sure that you are getting credit for being here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start since it seems like it's slowed down a little bit. So hello, everybody. Thank you for being here for the Jefferson County Drug Prevention Coalition's Xylazine Education. This is a 2-day course. The first day, obviously, is today. Hello, thanks for being here. And the second day is February 5th. I'll remind you of that probably again. If you have any questions that come up while you are listening, please feel free to put those in the chat and we will answer those as we get an opportunity to. And my name is Melody Quinn. I'm the Opioid Prevention Initiative Detective for St. Louis County, but I'm also the Secretary of the JCDPC. And we felt it was really important to bring this information about xylazine into St. Louis, since we are seeing a lot more of it coming into our drug supply and into our ERs. So I will be giving you just a little precursor of what xylazine is, and then we will continue from there. So without further
Oh, Melody, you are muted. Sorry.
Was I muted that whole time, or did it just automatically?
No, it just popped off for a brief second. So we got right up to the presentation. You're good.
Okay, good. So this is just what every substance use disorder professional should know about xylazine. And it's not moving forward for me. There we go. All right, so what is it? Real quick overview. You may have heard it called Tranq. That is because it is a tranquilizer. It is not an opioid. It was developed in the early 60s, and it is a veterinary medicine, which creates some issues for us because there's no FDA-approved use for xylazine in humans. There's a reason for that. It is a depressant, and it has very similar effects as fentanyl would have on the nervous system. Because it is not FDA approved and because it is a veterinary medicine, there is a legal gray zone regarding this medication for human use because we're not supposed to use it. So as it was FDA approved over 50 years ago for veterinarian use, it is something that can be gotten a hold of. And it's also known by several other names, including Tranq dope, the zombie drug, and anesthesia de caballo. It's a horse tranquilizer. That's what that means in Spanish, because this started being used in Puerto Rico. So they started seeing this in Philly for the continental US as early as 2006, but it really became prevalent in 2015. They were seeing it in the vast majority of the testing that they were doing and in the medical examinations that were happening post-death. And it came over from Puerto Rico in the early 2000s on their illicit drug market. And unfortunately, our xylazine-involved overdose deaths rose in Philly from 2015 to 2020 at a rate of 26%. And unfortunately, since then, it has continued to increase. And as of 2022, it showed that 34% of all overdose deaths had xylazine, and nearly 99% of them also included fentanyl or fentanyl analogs, according to the Philadelphia government. It started obviously being mixed heavily into the opioid supply, and that is certainly how it has come over into the St. Louis metro area and beyond. We are seeing it. Every ME death that we've had has had fentanyl and xylazine on board together. All too often, those who are using are not even aware in the beginning that xylazine is part of what's in their drug. So the effects that xylazine has on the body, they're not aware is going to happen until, unfortunately, it's often too late. In 2024, 50 of the 50 continental United States did see xylazine not only in their drug seizures, but also in their overdose deaths. And across the nation, because of this, deaths are on the rise. In the Northeast, where it really started, there has been a 103% increase from 20 to 21. In the South, there was a 1,127% increase. The Midwest saw a 516% increase, and the West saw a 750% increase. So significant increases, and obviously those are several years ago. That was the most recent data I could find for the country, according to the DEA. So in St. Louis County, from 21 to 22, we had a confirmed 62 xylazine deaths, and that was doubling what we had in the year previous. So it is definitely here in the area, we're seeing it a lot more significantly. So Tranq effects often look like other depressants. The blurry vision, the difficulty breathing, that slowing of the heart rate. But one of the biggest effects that is unique to Tranq is the necrosis. And this is what necrosis can look like in severe cases. It is a very common result in extensive xylazine use, and this is in humans specifically, which is one of the reasons it was never considered for human use. Unfortunately, once this happens, it is irreversible. And it can occur whether the person is taking it intravenously through their vein or orally. We will talk about more how, as a medical professional, you should deal with necrosis of the skin by some medical professionals who will be here on the 5th. And you're also going to learn about how to suspect if what you're coming across is a xylazine overdose and how to identify it and treat it. So unfortunately, what's next is that there is no actual FDA approval yet. Florida and a few other states, well, I say a few, 26 other states have started to consider legislation for xylazine or regulations of it as a controlled substance. Florida has already done that. And there is a movement in the government as of this past year to put into effect the Combating Illicit Xylazine Act. What that act would do is require veterinarians to get on the list if they do use xylazine in their medical practice, and it would make it a Schedule III drug under the Controlled Substances Act. It would not limit a veterinarian from being able to use it. It would just mean that they would have to track their supply. And it would require manufacturers and distributors to report what sales they had to the DEA. There's obviously harm reduction all across the United States that are being utilized, but specific to this, with injection sites, there are only 3 in the United States. Rhode Island was our first and quickly followed by 2 in New York City. And in that case, people can very quickly, in those protected supervised injection sites, learn fairly quickly if there is xylazine in their supply before they use. So just some quick reminders that this is being recorded. And if you would like to get a copy of the recording after the recording is complete, it will be on the Jefferson County Health Department's website at the link there on your screen. And the second part of the Xylazine training will be at the same time, February 5th at 2 p.m. Central. If you're wanting to get involved in the Jefferson County Drug Prevention Coalition, we would love to have you. So please send an email to Jillian, and her information is there on the screen. And if you would, after this whole uh, training is over, scan that QR code to do the post-test. Just to complement that pre-test, I will show this again, just reminding you to please complete the post-test before you get off today. And with that, I am going to introduce our speaker, Carlos de Valle, and he is the Community Relations Coordinator at Prevention Point, Philadelphia. He's been working there on boots on the ground in Kensington for almost a decade. He has had more than 760 overdose reversals to date, and he engages in diverse communities with harm reduction and enjoys educating others on the risks associated with substance use. He organizes block cleanups, grocery deliveries to 75 neighboring families, and facilitates community events for peoples of all genders. Previously, Carlos served as an overdose prevention specialist where he developed an outreach network in marginalized communities most impacted by overdoses by recruiting and training neighbors and their families. Presently, he conducts workshops at universities, hospitals, churches, and community groups. In his free time, Carlos loves reuniting individuals with their family, being a father, and creating a kinder, more caring world where the Eagles will win the Super Bowl. He had to plug that in there. So without further ado, please welcome Carlos. Thank you, Carlos, for being here today. We can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm here with a great friend and colleague in the field, Jen Scheinfeld from the Everywhere Project. We're just going to go over some techniques that I use when I'm in the field, responding to overdoses and persons who are suffer harm from wounds affiliated with Tranq dope. In Philadelphia, we do call it Tranq dope. There isn't real heroin out here. Pretty much it's a combination of fentanyl and more parts of xylazine. And I have a presentation I would like to show you. We're going to start here with Jen. You want to add anything?
No, let's do your presentation. Good, sure.
I did try to do this outdoors for you to make it as real as possible, but unfortunately it's about 7 degrees outside.
Yeah. It's a little brutal out here right now. Right.
At the end of this training or discussion, you guys should be able to differentiate what an overdose looks like versus someone who's just sedated off of xylazine. Regardless, we should always keep ourselves safe from hazardous materials such as syringes, broken glass, and body fluids. We like to wear PPE. The moment we're responding to an overdose or we suspect someone out in the field might have an emergency, the first thing we do is we're thinking about our loved ones and we're putting our gloves on. When I engage in the community, my outreach looks like this. I try to get people to get off the streets and come in our wound care department. We have various things throughout the week, such as different events, women's night, men's night, community night, just a bunch of things going on, a bunch of resources, a drop-in center. And what I like to do with our outreach is I like to engage folks. And what that looks like is I might wear something that's familiar with someone if I had to speak with them. I'm engaging everyone. I say hi to everyone because I want folks to understand that there's no judgment when I greet them. And I'm not going to push them towards going into treatment. I don't want to lose them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to treat them humanely and see if I can help them in any way possible. If I throw something to them and say, hey, your wounds look like crap. You should get that taken care of. I'm going to lose them. And we can't treat someone who's not around. Rarely do we know what combination of drugs people may have used. We must always stay safe, call 911 if unresponsive, control life-threatening bleeding, protect the head, neck, and spine, make sure they have an open airway, begin CPR if we cannot find a pulse within 10 seconds, and use an AED when available, give naloxone if we suspect opioid overdose. Now, there are a lot of slides here. I'm not going to go over every one, but these are some of the common opioids that we do see. Mainly, we're focusing on the fentanyl, the nitazine, and probably carfentanil.
Yeah, so what we see primarily in Philadelphia, what we're seeing across the US, is we have fentanyl within our dope supply. We do have a little bit of heroin that's coming back around. Nitazines are more prevalent as well. Nitazines is another class of opioid, just like fentanyl is a class of opioids, and it has multiple analogs that fall under it. Nitazines range from being anywhere from 5 times to 120 times more potent than fentanyl, depending on the analog that you get. Something else that we're seeing across the US is a resurgence of carfentanil, which we haven't seen since around 2016. Within Philadelphia, we've tested, I think, about 6 samples in the last 3 months that have had carfentanil. New York is seeing it again, and Florida is having a resurgence as well. My background just is I'm an epidemiologist, and I started the Philadelphia Department of Public Health drug checking program and ran that for 5 years, and currently work on a statewide drug checking program. So.
This is how we recognize an actual overdose. Do we see visible clues like drug paraphernalia? Do they have slow or unnoticeable breathing? A lot of times when someone's sedated, we can see them breathe, and with just a little bit of nudging at their sternum, we'll get a reaction at them. If I get a reaction at that moment, there's no need for them to be Narcaned. When I do my community engagement, like I said, I lead them with love. And what that's going to look like is I want to see if there's anything that these individuals who are maybe experiencing homelessness, the people on the street, what is it that they need? If they look like they are suffering from wounds, and I'll just add, during this time of year, everyone is bundled up and not everyone has access to wound care. We just need to just remind folks in a humane way, hey, you want to get your wounds checked, or, maybe have them go to the hospital. A lot of times folks could wait throughout this whole season, and come time for the spring season when the weather starts changing, those wounds have gotten so bad, they might have to be amputated, their limbs. So we just try to avoid that. And during the colder months, we want to engage. I like to be consistent. If I'm not doing outreach consistently, there's a good chance I'm going to lose folks and lose their trust. And I don't want to go that route. There's a great friend of mine, Tracy McCann, who might be on this call. When I met her about 3 years ago, I engaged her. I seen her, and I would just keep pushing to see if there was anything we can do. And thank God, luckily, she made it out of Kensington, and she's now clean for a couple of years now. But that came with the commitment of being present for Tracy in her life. When probably a lot of people shunned her and kind of wrote her off, some folks like myself and Jen and folks at Prevention Point were there for her. These are some other ways we can recognize an overdose. Are they responsive? Are they unresponsive to verbal and painful stimuli? Before we consider someone overdose, we're gonna check verbally and kind of give them a good yell out loud. I like to yell and scare them and say, hey, if you don't wake up, I'm gonna Narcan you. That's just a tactic just to kind of get them to wake up. If they don't wake up then I move into painful stimuli, and that's going to be a sternum rub or a pinch underneath the arm. each time I'm letting him or her know what I'm doing, because there are a lot of times when they're just sedated and they can actually still hear and they're somewhat conscious. I like to treat people with dignity and respect when I'm out in the field. Who knows what brought them to that point in their life? Folks might be experiencing so much trauma. If there is a woman out there, I like to get another woman to be present with me, just because I want someone who's very familiar and comfortable to be seen the moment that woman opens up her eyes. We like to have our trauma goggles on when we're out there in the field. We don't know what people have gone through. Do they have relaxed or some tense muscles? A lot of times, if I'm out in the field and I see someone looks like they're knocked out, they could be overdose, but normally their coloration is still there. With a pulse ox, I'll monitor your heart rate, and it's not too far off. That leads me to believe that they're just sedated. If I just get like a grimace of the face, I know at that moment they're not sedated. And with a little bit of, nudging, they could wake up. Times like that, I don't want to leave them on their own. If I have Narcan, I might leave it with someone there. If they're waking up in their conscious and they don't want to come back to maybe my drop-in center where we can monitor them, the key is monitoring them. And if someone's sedated, that can be for hours. Sometimes we see as high as maybe 5-point xylazine versus the fentanyl. And out here, believe it or not, a lot of people would rather go for just the fetty. Folks, their bodies are adjusted to the fentanyl and they'd rather have that than the xylazine. The xylazine will sedate people to the point where women are sexually assaulted out here. People are robbed of their items just about every day. So precautionary methods, we would tell them, test your substances. You're playing Russian roulette if you buy any drugs off the streets out here in Philadelphia. And test for fentanyl and xylazine. I like to tell people to test with both test strips at the same time.
Yeah, so one of the biggest changes is when xylazine hit the supply is the way that overdose presented in individuals. So back in the day, if it was heroin or fentanyl and you were going to reverse an overdose, Narcan somebody, they're going to pop up and be alert, right? And you're going to be able to tell them by a sternum rub, a pinch, something like that. But with xylazine, because it is sedative, even if someone is not overdosed, they are still sedated. So the responsiveness is not going to be the same way. And even after the reversal, that individual may not be as alert and readily with you at that time. So it's something that you want to be cognizant of and be with that person. So like Carlos said, there's a couple of very quick, easy steps to go with. You want to be a verbal cue, like, yo, baby, you good? You want to be loud with them because you think they're out. If they don't answer you, if there's no response there, we move on to something that's just a light physical stimulus. So you want to shake the shoulder, shake the arm. Like Carlos said in the beginning, your safety is important as well. So you check the area, make sure the person doesn't have any open syringes, any open wounds, things like that. If there's no response to that, we move into something that's more painful or intense stimulation. So that's where the sternum rub comes in. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the sternum rub. There's a misconception in the community that sternum rub can actually reverse an overdose, which is untrue. It is just a way to see if the individual is alert. And oftentimes it's used incorrectly. And we have a number of people that are walking around with burn wounds on their chests because of that. So some alternatives, which are particularly important seasonally, is you can do what I call the little sibling pinch, which is you get the back of the arm, you pinch and twist. So if anyone's got a little sibling or you are the little sibling, you're familiar. In the wintertime, something that's easy is the pressure points above the eyes. You can press in here. And there's also the nail bed press. So you can actually, if you take your thumb and press in here, this is also painful stimulation as well. If they don't respond to that, final thing is consent, right? Yo, if you don't answer me, if you don't give me something, I'm gonna Narcan you. So a lot of times someone hears Narcan
And they run for cover.
you'll get a pop-up. So
One of the other reasons why with the sternum rub is a lot of folks have experienced they are underweight and malnourished out in the streets. So if you have an outreach team that goes out frequently, chances are they're gonna treat people, personally. And we have a lot of folks out here who are malnourished, underweight, might have undergone endocarditis. So they're very fragile here. If someone during this cold weather, they're bundled up with 4 or 5 coats, I like to just, unzipper as much as I can. And I shout, hey, if you don't wake up, I let them know who I am. My name's Carlos from Training First Aid. If you don't wake up, I have to Narcan you. Let them know, hey, I'm gonna pinch you. Check their pupils. I want to see if they're pinpoint. And all these things I'm telling you we're doing it within a few seconds. I'm gonna show you now.
can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down? Because I cannot see our screen. If you can see Carlos with
You might have to.
the
We
mannequin.
So we can see your screen, but maybe if you can turn off the
Stop
blur.
sharing would be probably
Or
a great
stop
idea, right?
sharing. Yeah, stop sharing and then turn off the blur on the camera. Perfect. That looks good.
So just a regular day. I like to carry gloves with me. This actually keeps me grounded, wearing gloves, taking a couple deep breaths, wiggling my toes. What I like to do is just a gentle tap with my foot and their foot. Reason being, I want to make sure that the scene is safe and I know everything else that's going on. If there's a good amount of people around with the outreach teams, sometimes it would be great to have the help of the neighborhood if you're there or in your location by yourself and you feel unsafe. Anywhere in the world, this is a sign of relief. So what I like to do is I like to signal to people, hey, do you guys know this individual? Check for scene safety. I'm looking for major bleeding. And from a distance, you can actually see if the face is blue or purple. Something definitely is going on. But a gentle tap with my foot. Hey, my name is Carlos. I'm training first aid. If I feel it safe enough, then I'm going to engage. And all of this is just real quick. Hey, if you don't wake up after Narcan you, I've seen people run. No response there. Hey, I'm going to give you a pinch underneath your arm. Each time I'm letting him or her know. If I feel it's safe, I come here. I'm going to pull their eyelids back and look for sharp pinpoint pupils. I might spray a little bit of water on their forehead. And if I don't have a response and they are breathing, I can hit them with a dose of Narcan. I might have my pulse ox on them at this moment. Sometimes folks just need a little bit of air, If they are breathing and they're responsive and grimacing at the face, I like to turn them towards me. The purpose of this is if I leave this individual laying down and this person sedated, they could die as a result of choking on their tongue. I can't live with that. So I'm going to turn this individual towards me, prop their legs. And now if I needed more help from this point of view, I can go ahead and ask, hey, does anyone know CPR? Can someone call 911? If I needed to grab my bag, my Narcan, whatever it may be, this person is not going anywhere. This person isn't going to choke on their tongue. And usually when we turn people over at this position, they'll wake up. They'll give me something. I do not like to let, yes.
I'm so sorry. Can you guys point the camera down just a little bit? Okay, a little bit more. I just want to make sure people can see the mannequin, what you're doing. Okay, yes, perfect. I think that's better.
So if this person isn't truly overdosed and they're just sedated, I like to let them know that I'm going to put them in a recovery position. I'm not doing this without consent. Hey, I'm putting you in the recovery position. I'll prop them all the time. They're always going to be facing towards me. So my POV is looking for help. And if I have them propped in a recovery position in the perfect way, they're not going to move. I can run and have access to whatever supplies I might need. And from this position, if they are overdose and unresponsive, I can give the dose of Narcan right here at this position. All right. But you're only doing this if they are not truly overdose. If you had to sit someone down, with my experience, I like to sit them on towards a wall on the floor. There's a lot of times we have to monitor them, and if I'm not going to be there for the duration of that tranq dope wearing off, I'm going to leave them in the company of someone else. In an outreach world, what that's going to look like is I'm going to find someone and I'm going to make a strong connection in a moment's notice, and I'm going to let him or her know, can you hold this Narcan? Can you keep eyes on this individual? If they don't have a plan or someone that they could contact, if you have the availability to have them in a drop-in center, that's great. But sometimes you can't. So what are you going to do? I like to leave Narcan out and make a quick friend right then and there that I can entrust that will look out after this individual. Because with that sedation, like I said, that can last for hours. And we have a whole community that we tend to. So remember, just a small gesture with your foot, a small tap with your foot. We don't bang their foot because a lot of folks out here on the streets are malnourished, underweight, might not have socks on, might have wounds on their feet. So it's a gentle tap. And each time what I'm doing is my point of view, I am actually looking for help. I'm looking to see if someone else can, I want to deputize people. Hey, can you call 911? Does anyone know how to check vitals? There are some people out there who don't have the confidence, but they want to help. And it might take someone like, you guys to just be there present for them. Any questions so far?
So Carlos has mentioned pulse ox a lot. One of the things that we adopted in Philadelphia when xylazine hit is portable pulse ox readers, which allow us to read the oxygenation of someone's blood in the field.
Yeah.
They're not a fail-safe tool. They do have a misread of about 6% on individuals who have a darker toned skin. So they can give you a lower read. Depending on the temperature, they can also give you a misread. They also don't like to read on dark nail polish or fake fingernails. So we have been in the field and ripped some acrylic nails off to be able to get a read. And I do not apologize for that. But because they are an imperfect tool, there's some other tricks to know. In order to sustain life, one breath every 6 seconds. And when we say a breath, that's a legitimate, you want to see them inhale and exhale, and then you want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I count out loud because when someone is in a potential overdose, right, this is a high adrenaline situation, and that's 6 seconds, that feels like an eternity. So counting out loud is another way to keep you and other people calm, or so people are going to be yelling, give him another dose of Narcan, do this. You're like, no, it's literally been 6 seconds. If the individual's not taking a breath within that 6 seconds, a lot of the times what I'll do is be like, give a nudge if they are breathing. And it's important to know that what doesn't count as a breath is snoring and gurgling. Those are not breathing. You want to actually have that inhale.
I'll just add, these are face shields. We carry these in all our Narcan kits. In our red bags that we carry on when we do outreach, we have 2 bag valve masks. I'll have a hip pouch that has a pocket mask. There are times when someone's just sedated, and if I'm monitoring them, I'm monitoring their breathing as I have the pulse ox on them, I am literally counting the breaths, the rise and fall of their chest. If there's someone who just needs rescue breathing, if they're responsive but they need breathing, if their breathing is not 1 every 5 or 6 seconds, if it's every 10 to 15, it's okay to use rescue breathing. Now, what that's going to look like is, you can imagine in a community, you're going to have people who are for Narcanning, against Narcanning. The purpose of grounding yourself is to block all of that stuff out. From my experience, in emergency situations, my senses are at their peak. That means I'm going to block out the train. That means all the yelling, all the cars, the sirens going out. I'm like super hyper focused. I like to keep life-saving devices on my body. it saves me from stressing. If I have to, the moment I'm alerted to an emergency, if I have to consider, oh, where's my stuff? That's going to slow me up. Putting my gloves on, taking a couple deep breaths, wiggling my toes, showing me I'm alive. That leads me to believe whatever scenario I'm going to get involved with, I'm a little bit better prepared. I like to wear my watch on the inside because if I'm doing rescue breathing, if this person is responsive, but they need to get their breathing down to 1 every 5 or 6 seconds, with a face shield, you're going to get dirty, but I'd rather get dirty than have someone die. The face shield is just a diagram. It goes right over this, right over their face. It is not going to stop them, stop you from getting COVID, but it'll save their life. Just follow on the diagram. You can get these and put them in your wallets. If you did not have access to something like this, I rip a shirt. I do whatever it takes. I'm pretty
Carlos.
sure you guys, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to mention just on behalf of those that are on the call that are from Jefferson County. So I'm the public health outreach specialist with the Jefferson County Health Department. And so like us, Chestnut, Sauna Lake, and Compass, we all have
Indoors.
access to Narcan to give out. And through MIMH, I know I personally, we have access to the disposable CPR shields, the masks that you were speaking of.
Yes.
So if you're wanting any of these items to, keep on person, just in case a situation like this comes up, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat and I can get you connected with MIMH, or if it's just personal reasons, we can get that to you as well. So sorry, I just want to make sure to mention that. And we
Thank
also
you.
have, I guess wound care kits. I apologize. Wound care kits for xylazine that our opioid task force has kind of put together as well. So again, that'll be on the last slide that Melody has just to get more involved. And again, I'll put my contact info in the chat. So.
And just to piggyback off that, we do have Greg Bull from MIMH here, and he has put in the chat for anybody interested that getmissouri-naloxone.com. Reach out to them and they will get you the stuff that you need.
Thank you for that. I don't know if you guys have wound care clinics, like pop-up mobile wound care clinics. If you see any spike in xylazine use, like I would just, it's easier to stay ahead of the curve because once this kicks off like that, there are certain times of the month where we're seeing more parts xylazine. And from my experience, I know Jen could elaborate on this, the beginning of the month when people are getting their checks, SSI checks, pensions, whatever it may be, we're seeing stronger parts of xylazine contamination during that time of the month where people are getting robbed more. So I would advise to pay attention to certain times of the month. Certain holidays, there's going to be heavier xylazine use. If people are getting it for dirt cheap over here on the East Coast, there's no telling where it may lead to. And I would hate for it to go to any other community in the US, but it's almost like it's inevitable. You have anything to add?
So considering the act that Melody mentioned at the beginning, xylazine is no longer allowed to be sold in the US over the web. So it's actually really difficult to get to. And xylazine is an alpha-2 agonist. So we are seeing a very large transition to it's methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is xylazine on steroids. So it's 200 times stronger than xylazine. So the sedation that Carlos is talking about can last up to 10 plus hours for individuals. We see hallucinations with it, diuresis, things of that nature. But we in Philadelphia have seen a huge transition actually away from xylazine to this methamphetamine because of the alpha-2 agonist. And it is also a veterinary medication as well. It does have a formulation that can be used in humans. It's dextromethamphetamine. However, because that's regulated through the FDA and not a veterinary med, can't get that one. And what Carlos is saying is like at the beginning of the month when people's checks hit, like people got money, so it's a come up, right? So we can get your bags, get your bundles, and load up. And around the holidays, people have dollars in their pockets, things like that.
So
So
that we do have a
the-
question. Does metadramidine, does that
Xylazine.
cause necrosis like xylazine does?
so xylazine is a vasoconstrictor, and that's one of the reasons it causes wounds, right? So it's slowing our blood flow. And metadramidine is a peripheral vasoconstrictor, so it's slowing the oxygenation and the blood flow closer to the surface level. So what we've seen since that's hit our supply is individuals who have had these wounds develop, the healing has slowed and or stopped, right? Because the body is unable to get what it needs to where it needs to go. But we're not necessarily seeing like causation as well. But I'm not, that word is not gold. Okay, do not. That's just observational. Metadramidine has been in the supply here for a few months now, I would say. I don't even remember.
Testing, when you do the testing.
Yeah, so we one of the things that in addition to the Everywhere Project, like I said, I work with PA Groundhogs, which is a statewide drug testing program. We test the street level drug supply across the state of Pennsylvania. My focus is within Philadelphia, and expanding to New Jersey and Delaware state. So that's where this comes from. We work with DEA scheduled laboratory, CFSRE, and run mass spectrometry testing. And all of our data is actually available publicly on pagroundhogs.com. You can see the testing and how the supply is actually transitioned from xylazine to the metadramidine. And for kind of like fact sheets and things like that, those are also available, and I can send those to you guys so you can share them as well.
I'll just
Um,
add, for like your street outreach teams or anyone who's doing any kind of outreach, let's say you were to get some of those samples to be tested, I would just strongly urge you to just be very careful. There are times at the scene of an overdose or what might be an overdose, you might be tempted to just grab it and just kind of like see what it is and relay that back. Pay attention to your surroundings. There are people who would think you like work with the cops and won't trust you. But what I like to do is take a mental screenshot and just like jot it down up here, just take a quick look. And just remember, like a lot of these folks that we're dealing with, that's someone's sister, someone's brother, someone's daughter, and they're just caught in a rut right now. We like to treat them people with dignity and respect. Out here, we know a lot of folks personally. So if we could tend to them and get them up and going before paramedics would get there, that's our job, just to sustain life until.
I wanted to mention, I put it in the chat. So the health department, we put together is an overdose data dashboard. And so you can kind of track some trends and stuff that's going on in Jeffco. I put the link in there. As far as testing supplies, just the drug supply that's coming through, I know that's been definitely a hurdle that we've had a hard time navigating, but the sheriff's office is currently building a lab. And so we're hoping that that will get us a better idea of what's actually in our supply here in Jefferson County. So just some food for thought, so you guys have it and you can access that information on our website. So
I have a question. Do you guys have access to wound care vehicles like in certain communities, or do folks just go to like maybe a hospital or a clinic?
So I know we have like the health department, we have a wellness van that people can access, I think for basic wound care. I know that there's a couple girls on the call if you kind of want to mention what you guys can, if there's anything that you can help with in the community. Is that Debbie or?
The reason why I ask is because a lot of times people feel a lot of pressure going into some of these medical
Mhm.
facilities. Some folks are traumatized by professional personnel, who knows? So I just always like to keep my trauma goggles on and have a listening ear. I wanted almost like cater to them. Do something that there's been people in their life, but right now I want to give it to them in a different fashion. Hey, how can I help you? What is it that you need? If I'm doing this outreach and I'm in the community and I'm just giving out Narcan, I haven't even, you know, I haven't even reached folks. There are folks who at times when I'm doing outreach, they may need just someone to talk to, a pair of gloves, some hand warmers, connection to resources. So we have to go and do this outreach with the notion we have to be a mobile shop.
Mhm.
You know, with the xylazine use, what I've seen is there's a lot of times when folks in addiction are not that far from the dealer, within feet. And I want to get this person or this woman or whoever it is, I want to get them to our women's night that has a wound care, that has hot food and able to take showers. But how do I do that in a community where, you kind of have to be safe?
You have a question?
Go ahead. Question?
And Mary, yeah, go ahead.
You're muted, baby.
Mary, you muted.
I'm a nurse practitioner with the Jefferson County Health Department. We have a wellness van that provides like primary care and urgent care out in the community. We have worked some homeless events where we have seen people with some wounds from drug abuse. So we're very limited on the care we can provide. We can do some antibiotics, we can do some referrals, things like that. I would like to, maybe advance what we have on the van. But at this time, it's like very minor stuff that we can do.
Mary, have you been noticing a lot of folks with that necrosis? on
No,
those
we
vans?
haven't really, recently we haven't really seen anyone like that. Mostly it's in the summer when like people,
Outside.
a lot of times when they're outside a lot and they'll get wounds from like bug bites and things like that. We were at a homeless event where someone had an abscess from injection, but it wasn't necrotic. So no, I really haven't seen a lot of that in Jefferson County. Not that it's not out there. I just don't know how much people are aware of the service that we can provide for homeless and drug users. So that's something we need to kind of work on probably a little bit more.
We'd like to take a trip out there sometime in like the next couple of months, if that's possible.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great. We should have our.
We would
group
love
in
that.
February.
And this
Yeah,
is a great
by-
plug for the next session of this series because as I call our wound care goddess of Philadelphia will be presenting.
Mhm.
Um,
And our mobile unit really kind of focuses on underserved communities. We go to a lot of churches, a lot of food pantries, things like that. So we're really kind of trying to get out there more and do some homeless events. Like I said, right now we're waiting on our new mobile unit. We have like just a little Sprinter van that we're using right now. So it doesn't have like a real nice exam table or, a lot of privacy on here. So our new van should be out by probably March sometime. So hopefully, by then we can really kind of ramp up and see some more of those folks.
With my experience in the street doing street-based outreach, there are times when an individual can't make it to the hospital or even to our building, which is maybe a few blocks away.
Yeah, we do keep Narcan on here.
Mhm.
We do have that. We've not, had to use that yet. We do have some services through like the sheriff's department for like crisis intervention where we have had to call them a couple times. But yeah, we're probably just on the beginning stages of really reaching out to the current substance abuse users.
Trust is key,
Mhm.
having someone open up about their wounds and their drug use. It's gonna take a lot, but you just have to be
Mhm.
persistent. Be persistent, consistent. and kind and gentle with folks.
And
And
we,
that might be the deciding factor for someone to maybe start changing some parts of their life.
yeah, the people that we normally see on here are very open about their drug abuse. They don't really, I guess because it's a small space, they do feel safer, and it's usually just like me, Debbie, and maybe another MA on here. So usually they just tell us everything that's, they might come in for a urinary tract infection, and then we end up doing a whole STI panel on them, Hep C screening, and I've diagnosed lots of people with Hep C. A lot of former drug abuse individuals that have, are clean now, but have never really been tested or treated for Hep C. So we do see a lot of those. We also work with a place, Teen Challenge, which is a drug treatment program. And we see a lot of their individuals for like their physicals and their Hep C, HIV screenings, things like that. Usually a couple times a year, we'll actually go to their facility and see those folks on there. We see a lot of their prime, and we treat a lot of them for like start blood pressure medications back that they've been off of, and just things like that. So, I mean, we're starting to see more and be able to provide more services, and hopefully that's going to increase moving forward.
That's right.
I'm gonna just read off of I don't know how much more time, but I want to open it up for questions. Special considerations on Tranq. This is an opioid. Tranq is not an opioid, and Narcan has no effect on it. There are times when someone looks like they're overdosed. It looks almost identical. Typically, what I see is if someone is laying in a position where it seems uncomfortable, they're laying on a limb. My analogy is if you take a horse that just competed in the Kentucky Derby, when it finished, you might sedate it to go to the vet. Would you wake that horse up with Narcan, or you let it wake up on its own? Unfortunately, with human beings, we are malnourished and underweight, and we cannot have that happen. If someone's sedated off a Tranq, they're going to be laying in a position. If I'm getting ready to go home, they're laying near a curb. Within a half hour to hour tops, that person is going to move, or they're going to be laying uncomfortable on one of their limbs, possibly cutting off circulation. That's going to be, God forbid, a death as a result of xylazine use, not an actual overdose. So a lot of times what I do is I spend most of my day just checking up on people. Hey, are you okay? I'm just checking up on you. I didn't Narcan you. You might need some people who are strictly just doing that in your communities, just checking up on people. Just yesterday, we had a woman who could have passed for just a small amount of clothes. And luckily, I'm built to always check up on people. I'm always going to check up on someone. And if you do it frequently enough, there are going to be people in the community who are going to pick up off of that. And you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, you know what? This guy's always out here. This woman's always out here. Why not? There's some people who just need that confidence. They want to help. But we're talking about life and death. And this topic of drug use and overdose, this is a touchy subject that not a lot of people in America, they'd rather stay away from it. But we just have to educate folks on it, because we're losing people at a rapid rate. And it doesn't look like it's slowing up. It's spreading like a wild virus throughout the US. Just pay attention to the colder months when people are wearing all of this, 4 and 5 coats, because they might not want to, show their wounds. She might have table events where hey guys, we're giving away clothes, and pay attention to some of the clothing that they're wearing. Is it sticking to them as a result of fluid leaking through their wounds? Stuff like that. When I do my outreach, I'm looking for wristbands. I look for wristbands because I want to see if someone just came out of jail, if someone just got out of treatment. It's going to allow me to better adapt to whatever's going on and how I'll proceed in responding. Any other questions?
In the chat, Janelle mentioned, was just asking if there's any other health problems besides necrosis. that could be as a result of substance use with xylazine.
There's some of the mental things, depression. There's people who will feel so ashamed of themselves where they don't want to be around people because they just think like, you know what? I'll tell them, hey, look, your wound, look how bad it looks. They will allow themselves to risk losing their arm and keep shooting up in an arm and just let it go. So to me, it's some mental stuff going on. People are very depressed and ashamed of themselves, and that's the community engagement. That's us having a non-judgmental approach and just meeting people where they are and getting them to the next stage of their life. Whether it's treatment, whether it's for them to start seeing a wound care doctor, whether it's them to start testing their products more often, whatever it may be, I am not their judge. I'm just there to meet them where they're at and help them to get to the next stage of their life. Whether that's just them making an appointment, maybe applying for benefits, maybe getting their ID, whatever it is. That's my sole purpose out here in this community for folks who are living on the streets, experiencing hopelessness and, facing drug addiction.
I'm gonna throw into the chat because it's a very large topic, right? It covered a lot of shit. And it's a lot to remember and go over in such a short amount of time. So through the Everywhere Project, we've developed a couple of different field guides for supporting individuals who use drugs, which are all downloadable and they're free. And we've also done a wound care 101, which can be utilized from anyone from medical professionals to people who are unsheltered, as also gives advice about different types of supplies that you might want to use. And I think just to end on and summarize everything Carlos has been saying is it's approaching individuals from a harm reduction perspective. It's meeting people where they're at, right? You go out and you have someone who is actively using substances and maybe in a chaotic manner. You want to get them Narcan. That's your priority, but you want to think about what that individual actually, what's their priority? What do they need at that time and place? And by doing that and letting them know that they are important and their needs are important, that opens up an entire line of engagement and communication with that person. And it's just about meeting someone where they're at. Because I know from my perspective, when I was in my chaos, I didn't want anybody telling me where I was. And nobody could tell me about myself. And when they did, it was a done deal, it was a wrap. And then that just threw me deeper in, right? And there's that idea of how stigma and things like that create a whole cycle of isolation and increase. So it's just treat people like people.
I'd like to open up for questions right now. I know Tracy was supposed to be on the line. We are going to try to go out there like sometime within like the next couple of months. As the seasons change, our outreach practices change tremendously. If I'm out engaging in the community, giving out Narcan, seeing what folks like, I like to typically mainly do that at the beginning of the week because a lot of facilities aren't open on the weekends. And I like to do it ending the week. And if there are folks who are homelessness, they are ones who take care of each other. Engagement is key. If I'm walking outside, I am saying hi to everyone. I'm saying hi to the person across the street because at that moment that they might be under the influence, I want them to know that they matter at that moment. They might not get it at that moment. It might recollect sometime later on. Who is this guy? Who is this woman? But it has to be consistent. There's great success stories I have, but the success stories don't always end with someone going in treatment. Sometimes it might end with them just changing their habits. And that may lead to something as drastic as them, maybe giving everything up. But in the meantime, we're just trying to preserve their life and meet them where they are and help them get to the next point in life, whether it's show them the ways that they can reduce harms affiliated with substance use, whether it's point them in the direction of getting them off the streets, uh, wound care, clothing, housing, whatever it may be. That's what I try to do when I do my outreach. Yeah, and Xylazine has thrown a monkey wrench in it since about 2020 out here. I can tell you guys what I think it stemmed from with the stimulus and, you know, folks living on the streets just having all this money. And what are they going to do with it? So Xylazine, I think, made its way even heavier impact during those times because what are folks going to do? You know, they're carrying around cash. And like I said, that Xylazine, folks are getting robbed, women are getting sexually assaulted. So one way that they can help out with that is test their substances, test for fentanyl and test for Xylazine. And if they are still going to continue to use, double up on pants. Don't use alone. Use it, you know, these are just some things that folks who are going to continue to use, they're just going to keep them a little bit safer.
I have a question for you, Carlos.
Yes.
Does Philly have any intention of doing like Rhode Island and New York and creating safe injection sites where people could meet off the street and learn and get this education and potentially, you know, clean syringes? That's something that's really far out for us here in Missouri. We just got fentanyl testing strips legalized here not very long ago. But is that something that Philly, like, are you guys moving toward that? What is the future for Philly when it comes to combating those types of situations?
Philadelphia was slated to have safe consumption sites several years ago, but the organization that was going to implement them screwed the pooch and didn't do any community engagement and pissed off a lot of Philadelphia. And at this point, it is gone through different levels of federal court and things of that nature. So safe consumption sites are very far off. And in our current political climate, we are kind of going back to the 90s, which is terrifying because our administration will not allow any of our city dollars to fund syringes. And the city of Philadelphia health department funded Prevention Point, which is the only sanctioned syringe exchange in Philadelphia. They 100% funded the syringes that came out of there, and that was close to, I think it was $900,000 that needed to find private funding, which we have already seen the impact of with increased numbers of HIV cases and hepatitis C cases and things of that nature. So, it's bleak currently, but we got good people out here doing good work.
I'll just add with the rescue breathing. Rescue breathing is very much key. You can find someone who looks like they are overdosed. I would just encourage you, just reposition them. If they're on the streets, kind of get them going and just reposition them. I have 760 positive overdose reversals, but I have about maybe 15,000 people who I just checked up on and they were just sedated, and with a little nudging, they kind of came to. That comes with like a lot of community engagement. I don't know if you guys have anything that tracks real time, but here in Philadelphia, if we have maybe three or more overdoses in a 2 to 3 block radius over a period of a half hour, we are blitzing the community with folks who are just responding to overdoses and just being present. We shouldn't have to wait for that. If you have like community engagement teams that can just kind of be present and kind of floating around, I think it's key. I don't know if you guys have drop-in centers in Jeff County where folks can go to, you know?
Well, and like Carlos said, when he's reversing an overdose and deputizing individuals, I personally rely a lot on secondary distribution because we are limited, right? We're individuals, but we take care of each other. So getting members of the community to carry Narcan to pass out and be the distributors there, because they also hit individuals and are out longer in different areas and different locations, because it doesn't need to be us. Because it can be anybody. Anybody can pass Narcan out. Anybody can check on someone else, but it is giving them, like, empowering individuals and making sure they have the resources to do that. Greg, I see you.
Yeah, fantastic training, guys. We do training for law enforcement, fire, and EMS, and everything you just covered, and that was one of the best overdose response classes I've ever seen. Quick question for you guys about what you're experiencing in terms of xylazine overdoses. When you are, Carl, and I'm not going to quote you on the number, Carlos, but just like your best guess, how many overdoses are you seeing where the person is, unresponsive, barely breathing, you have to administer naloxone, and you really don't see an improvement? Because anecdotally, excuse me, what some of our medics are seeing these days here in St. Louis is they'll Narcan somebody, the person will start breathing, but they won't really wake up, or they won't regain consciousness fully. But their breathing does improve. Are you seeing overdoses where it's really the tranquilizer itself that's causing the respiratory depression and the Narcan just doesn't do anything? Or are you seeing what I just described?
That is one of the biggest impacts that xylazine had, was the way the overdose is presented and the reversal. So because naloxone will not act on xylazine, an individual may start breathing again because you removed the opioids from the opioid receptors, and that enabled the person to start breathing, but they're still tranked out. They're still sedated. So that is extremely common, but we are able to get individuals to, like, respond. But I've literally been able to be like, I'm sorry, I narcaned you and called you a dumb bitch, but and I get a smile and then they're out again. But I know that they're okay. So no, it's extremely common for that to occur, because it's not like when it was just heroin or fentanyl and you Narcan someone and then they're up and alert because you're taking the substance off of the receptors, right?
So with my experience, what I've noticed also is if I see someone who's just about actively using, usually it's within like 8 minutes that they are going to overdose, if it is like that. Educating the community. A lot of times people think Narcan is a miracle drug, and it is. But they want immediate results. And what that looks like to someone who's not educated is after one dose, and Narcan has been described as pure hell for the average user, they might follow up with 2 or 3 or 4 doses. With my experience, what I've known is that's worse on their withdrawal symptoms. Precipitated withdrawal. We have the availability out here to use a 2 milligram dose of Narcan, and we can control how much we give a person. I'm not, if you have it available and you can access it, maybe. But if someone is in need of just rescue breathing, we are just going to do just a rescue breathing portion. A lot of times I like to have someone close to me if they're in that position, in a recovery position, and I'll gently tap their back and continue like you would a baby, patting them. And it's just to kind of keep them alert and alive long enough where they won't slip back into an overdose or sedation. And that gives the paramedics enough time to come on by. But in the company of a home, if you suspect the kid is, by accidentally ingested opioids, that's not going to do nothing to them with the withdrawal, because they're not dependent on opioids. So use it as your discretion. We have 4 milligram doses as well as 2 milligram and intermuscular Narcan. That's 1 milligram. And generally, I see a stronger reaction, a quicker reaction to something like that. And I tell people, in the comfort of your own home, how fast would you want your loved one back? Would you want to wait the whole 5 minutes? Because I know 1 minute could seem like an eternity. Or would you want that individual back 1 to 2 minutes? And that's where the education piece comes in, at where people can, if they needed to use it intermuscularly, or if they needed to use a deatomizer on that 2 milligram, they can control it and they're coming back a lot quicker. Out in the field, we carry both. And we use it as at our discretion. And when we leave the community, we hope to leave it where folks who are still out here in the streets look out for one another.
Cool. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, then you're not seeing a lot of cases where the tranquilizer by itself is causing lethality or respiratory depression, where they're not able to be have their breathings restarted essentially by administering naloxone. If I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah,
Not to say it doesn't complicate things with like sedation, like you're saying, but in terms of actual lethality, we're not to the point yet where like naloxone just isn't getting the job done.
right.
If I'm
We're
hearing you
seeing
correctly.
Rescue breathing is needed. The Narcan's there if we need it, but there are, like I said, I might have reversed 760, but there's about 15,000 people who looked exactly like they were overdosed. And it's like, oh, hey, listen, I did a Narcan you. I was just checking up on you, making sure you're okay. But that rescue breathing is definitely key. And when you guys are out doing your rescue breathing, if there's a crowd of people around you, have some folks who are great at crowd de-escalating. Because if you want to calm down your stressors, you have to focus on what you're doing. If it's that rescue breathing, a lot of times with the rescue breathing, one more thing I want to add, if you can turn the camera to it. Sometimes I will expose their stomach just a little bit, because as I'm giving this oxygen with, say, a bag valve mask, this is just another indicator if that oxygen is going to go into their stomach by accident, by me just hyperventilating, or is it going to go into the lungs like it ought to be. So exposing the stomach a little bit, it's just going to keep you in perspective that you're doing the right thing, that the oxygen that you're giving is not going to lungs. That's just a little tip bonus that I like to do.
Can you,
Sorry,
can you point the camera down a little bit more?
If I'm using a bag valve mask, and I'm able to have another person there with me, that person's monitoring my seal. I'm monitoring their lungs and the air, making sure it doesn't go to their stomach.
And for the rescue breathing, Carlos is talking about, you want to make sure the individual is on their back. You're going to tilt the head back, pinch the nostrils, and you're going to make sure that person's mouth is open. What we do is what we call a mouth swoop. So oftentimes individuals have candy, maybe a cap in their mouth. And if you see anything, you just want to take your finger and go in and just quick get that out, because if you're going to do rescue breathing, you don't want to lodge that deeper into their throat, right? If it's something that you cannot get that way, you're going to put that person into the rescue position, because you're going to do more harm than good giving them rescue breaths or trying to get that and accidentally lodging it further. But once you have the individual on back, head back, pinch nose, chin forward, so you have a wide opening, right? It's going to open up the airway. And it's 2 quick, strong breaths to start out. And then you're going to do 1 strong breath every 5 seconds. And again, it's that same counting out loud thing, because it just helps keep the rhythm and it helps keep the situation a little more stable. So
this can be done by one person, but it's better with two people. What I like to typically do, if I'm doing rescue breathing, I know that it's going to get messy. There are a lot
Can
of
you
times
point the
when
camera
people,
down? I'm sorry, Carlos. Can the camera be?
there are a lot of times when it's going to get messy. I can be out in the street, it could be raining, whatever it may be. I like to dig deep, and what I mean by that is my legs are kind of spread apart, and I'm getting ready to be here for as long as it may take. If I'm going to be doing rescue breathing for, say, the duration of 2 doses of Narcan, what's that, 10 minutes? I want to feel comfortable. I'm only going to switch if I need to with somebody I actually trust, because once I have that seal in, I typically don't break it, even if I'm too tired. Somebody like Jen, I have Jen switch over. But when we're doing this, what Jen will be doing is Jen is making sure that my seal is on there. And see how close we're working? Nothing in the world matters right now at this moment. The person's neck is pulled back, and I'm in a good position if I had to be here for a good amount of time. And we're just doing this until they start breathing on their own, or paramedics come.
So this is an ambu bag, which is an alternative to the face shield, right? These are single use after you do them. toss it. In order to sterilize these, you need like this thousands of dollars, like UV machine, a lot easier to chuck it. They come in adult and pediatric sizes. Personally, I found pediatric sizes work really well with some of our community members who are smaller women. And the adult sizes work really well. The seal that Carlos is talking about can be difficult for people who have facial hair and things of that nature. So even if you do have an ambu bag, sometimes opting to do rescue breathing can be better because working to get that seal with this can take up more time than is necessary.
And I'll just add that if you don't have a face shield or a pocket mask or a bag valve, maybe a handkerchief, a bandana, or ripping up the shirt. I don't typically like to let anything come in the way of me being this person's lungs. So you can utilize a lot of your even clothing. If you had to just rip a piece, don't let anything stop you from letting this person live, pretty much, in a nutshell. We keep these on us at least 2. We have pocket masks, we have face shields. Most of my days is just checking up on people, make sure they're alive. We do realize it's more part xylazine, so typically not everyone out here is overdosing, but we can still reposition them and get them off their limb that's been cut off circulation, so this way they don't lose that limb. Even if we see someone isn't overdosed and we get a thumbs up from someone, take that second step and just say, you know what, let me just move this person towards a wall sitting up. I don't want to come into work the next day and I get bad news that that person didn't die of an overdose, but they were choked out because they had cut their circulation off laying in a position that they shouldn't have been in. So any questions?
We don't have any questions in the chat. If anybody has any questions, they want to raise their hand via the little hand raiser, you can do that as well. This is really informative. I really appreciate the fact that you harp on keeping yourself safe as well as indicating staying a good distance in the beginning to see whether or not they are responding to that light tap with the foot. I think that's important. Remembering to keep those face shields with you at all times. That's all really, really valuable information. I don't think we hear that quite enough. So thank you for sharing that. If an individual is AMA after an overdose event, do you guys do anything specific for those individuals? Because obviously you're not going to be able to stay there with them, into the future. Is it just simply finding someone that is within their community that's willing to stay with them, that will be there in case they slip back into overdose? How do you handle that?
So what I typically do is I'm going to stay there with them as long as I can. If I let people know as they come to, right? This is exact language. The moment someone comes to, I'm already aware that they're going to come to. So crowd de-escalation looks like this. I'm having a bunch of people scream at me. I need one person to focus and let them know, hey, it takes 5 minutes for this dose to work. Let's keep it going. Hey, this person's skin color came back after that dose. That helps us as the folks doing this kind of work. And it also shows other people with this domino effect, hey, you can do it too. If someone doesn't want to go with the paramedics, the moment that they come to, and this is what I do personally, if it's a woman, I'm going to get someone else. Any random woman I see, hey, miss, can you help? I just deputize somebody at a moment's notice. Hey, I really need your help. This person, if I have my pulse ox, those numbers are climbing with every breath that I'm giving them. As they start climbing to about 82, 84, 87, they're just about there. Now it's just a thing where I'm just like, hey, let's get ready. Let's kind of like get this crowd away. At the same time, I have a few folks who are picking up syringes, cleaning up the area for the paramedics, firefighters, and police that are coming, because I want them folks to feel just as safe. They go through a lot of trauma 24/7 that they're on the clock. And nobody really looks at that part. They go home to their families. The moment someone comes through, I let them know, hey, listen, you Narcan. I let them know, hey, listen, you overdose. Let them process that, because at that moment, they don't know where they're at. There's 50, 60 people around them. And then I let them know, as serious as I can be, we had to Narcan you. The reason why I use that language is someone wants to wake up and point all their negative attention to one sole person. But if me and this total stranger came together and considered saving your life, it's hard to get mad at a few personnel. Hey, listen, we did rescue breathing. You weren't breathing for 10 minutes. I'm a drama king. I like to make it so much that this person sees, wow, you know what? If there's any change to be done, whatever manner it is, if you need to start testing your substances so stuff like this doesn't happen, or whatever it may be, that is my ultimate goal. When they come to, I let them know, hey, we had the Narcan you. Paramedics are on the way. I don't take no for an answer. I don't want to go with the paramedics. Just go get your vitals checked. At that moment, I'm hoping that paramedic is a great salesperson, that they talk them into maybe going to the hospital. And if that's not the case, if you're able to take them to one of your drop-in centers or call a loved one, then go that route. If not, I'm leaving Narcan with someone and I'm making a direct connection with just a random stranger and hoping that this person will look after this individual. And then immediately after that, me and whomever, we're going to debrief, because you do not want to take this home with you. And what that's going to look like is real quick. What went good, what went bad. And it gives us a chance to develop as humans if we're going to keep staying in this fight. And what that looks like is Jen might go first. Jen, what went good, what went bad? Let Jen get everything off her chest that she just witnessed, and with no interruptions. And then me. If it's a total stranger and you want to call someone, but don't have it to where you take this with you, because this has happened to me before in my past. And I'm driving home one day after reversing a couple, and my hands were stuck on the steering wheel and I couldn't move. I had like heat flashes. I ran upstairs and it was awful. Other times I might have snapped at my daughters, because what this does is it grows roots in us for a time when you don't think, and it's just going to explode at a random time. And there are folks in our life who don't need this. You know, what we do in this circle, and everybody here, we do a special kind of work that about 97% of America could never do, because it's a little bit too much. So with that, I just say, if we're going to stay in this fight a long time, we need to take care of each other. Self-care. I don't know what that means, but I'm working on that.
So self-care looks different for everybody. Could be a bubble bath. Got a coworker who loves a good bubble bath. That's his go-to.
Sports.
There you go.
For me, it's sports. A lot of times when I'm doing my community engagement, I like to wear Philly sports team, so that this way, if I engage with something, that's my icebreaker there. Hey, did you catch the game? And this gives me opportunity. Just all I need is a small crack to get in, and that's it. And I'm gonna get in. I'm gonna talk and develop somewhat of a relationship and hone in on maybe one thing that I can learn about this person. And each time I see them, that's what I'm gonna present. And I try to win them over this way, because up until this moment in their life, everybody's probably thrown so much at them. I have to do something different if I want to win them over.
But to answer your question and to follow up on what Carlos said, after someone comes to, it's important to let them know they've been Narcaned, right? And it's a high adrenaline situation again, right? And I always let people know and then tell them don't use for X amount of time, depending on how much they got, because my biggest pet peeve is we assume because people use substances that they know about Narcan, they know about testing strips, they know how to use them, they know the follow-up steps. But we throw these resources out there without the education behind them, and it's useless. So someone is been Narcaned, they're in precipitated withdrawal. It's fucking uncomfortable as shit. The instinct is I'm gonna go get well, but that person's not gonna get well because those opioids are not gonna attach to the receptors. And then when that naloxone wears off, they're at a risk for re-overdosing. So they need to be informed every time and never assume that they know that. If someone does not want to go with the ambulance, it's okay. Do you have somewhere that you can go that's safe, or do you have someone that can be with you, or having someone there to be like, yo, you good with like sitting with them? And I saw that you guys just got the fentanyl test strips up in the state, so you know,
We're still
passing
working
them.
on xylazine.
Yep.
Technically, xylazine still considered paraphernalia, even though fentanyl test strips are now legal. But if you're using xylazine test strips to determine whether or not the drug is in your supply, then that is considered paraphernalia still with the state of Missouri.
Yep, we love it. Yeah, we just got our testing um strips and other devices legalized about a year and a half ago in PA. Before that, it was just fentanyl test strips, and we were able to like slide in language that legalized the other stuff.
We might have to get with you
However,
on that.
yeah, however, it's not a decrim bill, so you can have the testing devices, but if you have the substance, you're still fucked.
One more thing
Um,
I wanted to add. When someone is given too much Narcan, um, those precipitated withdrawal are shown immediately. And what that could look like is if someone just finally builds up the confidence to finally try to do this kind of work and save this individual, if they're not educated and they hit someone with maybe 3, 4 doses of Narcan within a few minutes, they are going to see immediate precipitated withdrawal, whether that's vomiting, throwing up, and that could deter someone from continuing to do this decent, humane work. Um, so education is key. Whenever you guys have the opportunity to have little pop-up events, maybe at certain rec centers, be able to educate folks and have table events, I would really engage in that kind of stuff. Churches, reach out to a lot of organizations. There were some times a few years ago where some people kind of told us, hey, you know what? That's good and all, but that's not in this neck of the woods yet. Just keep it down there. Look, 2 years later, the whole city is, hey, can churches are open up their doors. Hey, can you educate us on this? Oh, you mean to tell me you have personnel in your congregation who deals with this? It's out there. I just like to be ahead of the curve rather than piggybacking on it afterwards, seeing how we can help. I rather just, it's good versus evil out there. And if we're waiting for evil stuff to happen, then we're doing our communities a disservice.
I will say in our favor, there are a lot of people even on this call right now who do that kind of work on a regular basis, making sure that's educated. I will say also, MIMH, Greg Bull, who was on here and had to get off, MIMH has been educating our EMS, fire, and police on this very specific topic through DOTS Mobile, and MoCore, and educating them to leave behind kits as well and teach those individuals they're giving the kits to on how to use them. So that's a real positive step in the right direction that we are doing. We are trying to get as much of that education out there as possible, which is one of the reasons we invited you here. So thank you very, very much for agreeing to be a part of this and helping bring the education about xylazine to Missouri. I think it's one of the most important things that we could be discussing is how our drug trends are changing and really becoming a lot more dangerous. And you've taught us something even new about, I'm not going to be able to say the word right.
Metadamidine. I know it took
Thanks.
me like 6 weeks to be able to say it, and by then I'm good.
Now I'm
I
going to
want
have
to
to
respond to
do a
Ellis.
deep dive
Ellis
into that.
Fitzwater wrote, getting people to take part in the education as offered is sometimes difficult. This is a difficult topic. This is a topic people don't like to talk about. But it's so real. There are times when I will conduct a training and there's one person at the very end that's been staying around long enough. And it's because that individual might have lost someone and they just need closure. Have it as real as can be, when you are dealing with folks with wounds, try not to grimace at your face with what you see or what you might smell. That could steer somebody off completely, and you can very well lose them, you know, from access and services you guys might have. So it is difficult, but someone's going to catch on, and word of mouth carries on fast. And if you are persistent with the work you do, you'll get more success. And I just want to thank all of you guys there for the work you guys do. And we look forward to like coming out there.
I would also say, Alice, it's about being able to offer the education in different formats, right? You can't necessarily expect someone to be able to sit on an hour and a half long webinar, but maybe they can take a palm card. It's something they can flip through at home. Philly loves to put a QR code out there, but who has access to phones and Wi-Fi? So that's not accessible. So making sure that you have something that's accessible, like making sure that the language is at the appropriate reading level, making sure it's ADA compliant, that people can actually read the font. If it's that way, if it's audio, making sure it's loud enough and slow enough. We are a generation of TikTok, right? It's shown now that like we are able to absorb things in 30 seconds. So short and sweet is usually our best delivery method at this point.
So I wanted to mention again for those that are in Jefferson County. So besides the Drug Prevention Coalition, which is where this all stemmed from, we're going to be looking at what next steps are. And I'm really excited to have you guys hopefully come to our area. We also have the Jefferson County Coalition for the Unhoused. And so we do a lot of outreach in the community, whether it be organizing events where we're bringing services and resources, but also we have like a street outreach team and so like that. So there's lots of ways to get involved and help us grow what we're doing. And I'm hoping to kind of mimic some of what you guys have going on. I took a trip to New York. We did On Point NYC, and that they did some really cool stuff out there too. But I put my email address again in the chat if you want to be involved in any of those groups. If you're local, shoot me an email and I'll make sure you're, get involved and let's do something. So, and thank you guys for everything you're doing out in Philly and for sharing your stories. And you guys are just amazing. So very inspiring.
Thank you. One last thing, we haven't talked
Mhm.
about home use, drug use in the home. The number one place for someone to overdose in the home is the bathroom. If you have any loved ones that you suspect is using and you kind of don't want to blow up their spot, it's going to be hard to live with a death. Every 5 minutes, a knock at the door, just a knock at the door. One day they will get it. Also, if you work in a facility that's kind of like a shelter or something like that, make sure that those doors open outwards. If someone's overdosing in a bathroom, that dead weight could feel like three times them. If someone is overdosing in the street, we like to move them. If someone's just sedated in the street, we like to move them towards safety. Be careful when moving them with their limbs. If they're suffering from wounds, that could agitate them a lot. Any questions? I know Tracy was supposed to be on this call, but she's away on a cruise right now.
Well, I'm hoping we'll be able to get her on day 2 just to share her experience. I am going to share one more time just for those who are wanting to do the post survey. If it's popping up.
So yeah, there should be it. Yeah. The link is in the chat. And again, February 5th at same time. You actually can use the exact same link that you joined this meeting today. But I might have a calendar invite with it, but we're just doing the same way. So.
Well, thank you guys so much. And
Yes,
we will see you in 2 weeks. And thank you, Carlos, for being here and being a part of this. And we look forward to learning more from everybody here in Philly coming in 2 weeks. I know there's a lot more to talk about. So can't wait to hear about that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.